the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back, everybody, to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the privilege of speaking with Juan Alvarado Jr., a U.S. Army veteran who served for 9 years, rising to the rank of Sergeant E5. Throughout his military service, Juan demonstrated resilience, leadership, and an unwavering commitment to standing up for what's right, leading hundreds of soldiers during his time in the Army. After overcoming difficult upbringing and dealing with emotional challenges of transitioning from military to civilian life, Juan has dedicated himself to inspiring others. He's transformed his experience of overcoming PTSD and battling self-doubt into a career where he empowers leaders in schools and beyond. Juan's mission is now to build leaders in school districts across the country, sharing his powerful message of intentionality and purpose. He's not only left his 9-to-5 job, but also has become a full-time speaker, pouring his passion into helping others lead with authenticity and purpose. Today, we'll dive into Juan's inspiring journey, the challenges he's faced, and how he's used his story to uplift leaders and inspire future generations. So let's warmly welcome the true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran, Juan Alvarado Jr. Juan, brother, thanks for being here, man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored and blessed to be here.
Yeah, man. Same, dude. When we connected on Podmatch, I was super grateful that you responded and booked the time to come talk to me. So let's just jump right into it, man. Where did you grow up? What led you to the Army, and how did your career go?
I think I had one other person ask me that, and I always laugh because I'm replaying the time in my head. So I grew up in a city called Whittier in Los Angeles, California. And it's where I went to high school, lived, now less than half my life. I joined the military when I turned 18. So my dad said one day, "Hey, tomorrow's your birthday and you turn 18. I was like, "Yeah." And I'm thinking he's like, "Guess what? I got this car outside for you," or, whatever. And he's like, "Do you know about the selective service?" I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, every guy, when they turn 18, have to sign up for selective service." I'm like, "I have zero idea what you're talking about." And so he's like, "Yeah." And so he started telling me about his draft number and all this other stuff. And I was like, "Dad, I think that stuff's changed." And he's like, "No, you need to go to do the selective servicing." So so this is back in the day, right? So like I went to my local library and got on their computer, their modem, and finally got connected to the internet. I used my AOL disk that I got in the mail, and I researched like what is selective service and stuff. I'm like, oh crap, I need to do this. And so there was a recruiting office down the street from where I live, and so I went in there. I'm like, "Hey, I'm supposed to do this selective service thing," and all they saw were dollar signs, right? And so
of
they're
course.
like, "Hey, why don't you come over here and take this practice test?" And so I was like, "Whoa, okay." And so then I took this the practice like ASVAB test and kind of shocked the shit out of everybody. They're looking at my results and they're passing it to everybody. I'm like, "What's wrong?" And so they're like, "Take it again." And I was like, "I think I got some time." And so then I took it again, and they're like, "What the heck?" And so apparently I scored really well. And so then they took me to MEPS Center in LA, and I took the actual test, and they're like, "We got 2 jobs for you that you can do, or 3 jobs that you can do." And so then, I made my choice. And but yeah, I joined for 2 reasons. One, I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Right.
But 2, I had present parents, but I just bumped heads with my mom a lot. She was the disciplinarian. My dad was more like, "Hey, let's talk things out." And, "Hey, your mom's a little upset. Let's talk this." My mom was like grabbing you by the shirt and in your face and yelling and smacking you and stuff. And so I was like, "Dude, I'm done with this." So I was like, when I'm 18, I'm gone. I was like, let's think about this a little bit, bro. Like, there's no way you can live on your own. And so I was like, I'll just join the military. And so I did. And
so was it always the Army, or did you talk to other recruiters? Like what recruiter sat you down and said, "Take this ASVAB"?
Yeah. So it was Army. We had the Marine one, wasn't the Marine. I want to say there was Marine and Navy were in one building. It was us, like the Army one. And then I think Air Force was right next door, and they weren't even open yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if the Marine side were trying to like push on the door when it was a really pull on the door.
Damn,
And they're like, "Oh, place is
eaters.
locked." No offense, guys. Yeah, no, it was Army one. I think in hindsight, I always tell people like, do your research. I wish I would have had somebody to help me out in that. I was like, I would go and see which each one provides, find out which one can help you. Like, do you know if you're going to make it a career? If not, which one's going to help you get back into civilian life easier and hook you up with a job? So I probably would have done things a little bit differently. But yeah, no, it was just the Army recruiter was the only one that was open at that time when I went, and everything just fell into place pretty much.
Dude, and that's such sound advice. I'm so glad that you point that out now, because I get asked all the time, my kids think about joining the Army. What advice do you have for them? And it's like, join the Air Force. That's my advice. And I like how that you're touching on that, is do your research, because there are a lot of factors that go into, not only what you're going to end up doing while you're in the military, but how your transition out is going to be, and whether you're setting yourself up for success or not. I was an infantry guy. I didn't know any better. I didn't know you couldn't really use that when you get out. And, hindsight being 2020, knowing everything I know now, I probably would have joined the Air Force. Their life was so much easier. They had way better rules and
Better
regulations.
barracks, better food.
And better TDY assignments. Their NTC rotations, they're staying in, a hotel out in the economy, and we're stuck in the cantonment area in tents, you laying on gravel,
Yeah.
And then just like think about your job, like what is going to set you up for success, like you said, when you get out. So I'm so glad that you touched on that stuff. You said you scored really high on the ASVAB, so I'm thinking in the back of my mind you were probably like a language guy or an intel guy. What ended up being your
job? So they offered me to be a linguist, to go to Monterey to learn Arabic, which I didn't take, and in hindsight, holy moly, I wish that I would have done that. I saw how long the schooling was, and it was like 2.5 years or something like that. I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. Intel was the next one, intelligence, counterintelligence, and then the other one was to be an MP. The goal was to become a police officer, which I ended up becoming a police officer later on in life, after I was done with my deployment for about 2 years. But I didn't do the MP thing. When I started looking into the intel stuff, I was like, ooh, this is what I want to do. It fit me better, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. I wish I would have done the linguist part of things, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, intel.
You're not the first person I've heard that's passed on an opportunity to go be a linguist, and they find out, same thing you did. It's 2.5 years of school. What they're not telling you is it's 2.5 years in Monterey, California. I hear DLI is like one of the best duty stations I've ever heard anybody talk about.
Yeah. I have a buddy who did it, and he's like, you didn't choose it? And I go, no. So he last I heard, this was, I don't know, like 10 years ago, he was in Dubai. He was the live-in translator at one of like those big luxury hotels, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah, because that's a rough life, right?
Yeah.
That's a rough life.
Yeah, getting paid bucks to be a translator.
Dude, that's awesome. So you mentioned you did a deployment. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, where did you go? How was that for you? And then I assume you probably got out after that deployment. Is that what you kind of just said?
Yeah, so pretty close. So I was left with we were cross-leveled with a couple different groups. We were cross-leveled with a group from a theater support command out of Louisiana, and then we mashed up with an infantry unit, oddly enough, infantry and MP unit from Wisconsin. And when we deployed to Camp Arifjan, Kuwait. Sweet. Awesome. Still considered a
hazardous duty war zone. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're getting all this other hazard pay and all this other stuff. So it was like, sweet. You had a pool, the theater, like it was chill. One day, midway through deployment, we're doing security briefings for everybody, and everyone says like, hey, what's working, what's not, kind of deal. And so I was like, hold on, I have an issue and a problem that we have to come up with this this intelligence summary, and we have to tell guys that are on convoys when to leave, how to leave, where to stop, the whole route, what routes to take, everything. And they get it from us back here sitting behind desks. Like, they should know what routes to take. They should know what times. Like, they're the ones living. Yes, we get the information later, but they know way better than us. Like, why are we telling them what to do? Like, it's a waste of our time. It's a waste of their time. They're getting this report and like, you guys have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Like, we're here and we only get information that they give us. So later on that evening, there's a knock on the tent door, and like, Sergeant Alvarado. I said, yeah, and they said, hey, I'm Specialist so and so. I'm Corporal so and so. You're gonna come with us. And the next half of my deployment, I'm living the routes. I went from Camp Arif John, Kuwait, to Ramadi, and started to go up and down all those routes to learn those routes to give better intel to the people back in Kuwait. So
What?
foot in mouth or boot in mouth for
Right.
sure.
What year was this?
'06.
Oh man, I just missed you then because I was there in '05. I was up in Tikrit and Mosul. So, and then I would
Okay.
come back in '07 and I would end up doing some time in Ramadi. So I'm familiar with all those routes you're talking about. And back then, it's like important to note in '05 is really when the IED threat really kicked off, like big time. So I can imagine why they wanted you with them, to do the intel on the routes because we couldn't keep up with all that.
Right. Yeah, and the other cool thing is kind of foot and mouth in we had to qualify with our weapon, of course, and when we were doing that in Kuwait, there was a guy that was there that was watching me qualify, and he was like, "You're a pretty good shot. Hey, you want to go through some courses with us?" I was like, "Sure." And so they took me, and we did some other course work, and he's like, "Damn, you're a pretty good shot." And he goes, "Do you shoot often?" I was like, "Nope." And everyone thought it was funny because I shoot handgun with my right, but my rifle's with my left.
Are you
And
naturally left-handed?
no, I'm right-handed.
That's strange. That's
So
so
yeah, so
strange.
so in so in basic, what happened was I was having a hard time with the M16, and what was happening is I was shooting right, and my head was so far over because I'm left eye dominant that it was throwing off my shots. And so the drill sergeant said, "Hey, let's try something. Instead of your head hanging all the way over, how about you line it up perfectly underneath your left eye and shoot left-handed? Are you lefty?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Try it," and then I was just knocking down everything.
Nice.
So this group that I was a part of when we were deployed was called Task Force Gator,
Mhm.
and Task Force Gator was just, you drive around dignitaries if you needed to go and just do some stuff for, like, take some people from the embassy back to Kuwait, whatever. You were just doing like small little missions. Well, then they needed help they asked if they had any intel guys, and like, "Oh yeah, we just picked one up, me." And they said, "We need you to help out going clearing some buildings." I'm like, "What the hell am I going to do with that? Like, I'm not that badass dude. Like, what are you talking about?" Because of my secret clearance, I'm the only one that was able to grab laptops and hard drives and things like
Yeah,
that.
so do the
Uh,
SSE.
yeah, so I'm over there with all these guys, and they're like, "All right, like, we have to bring this guy around." And so then I just got to see a bunch of pretty dope stuff with some pretty dope guys, and kind of brought all that together when going back my last month of deployment back to Kuwait. And I was like, "Okay, this is what you guys are missing out." And it was almost a blessing in disguise because I started to be able to shed light on a lot of things that were going on, because the biggest issue that I had was everybody wanted to be the big D when it came to briefings in front of all this brass. And so where we were, you had intel from Marines, Navy, Air Force, Army, and everybody was hoarding information because they wanted to be the big D in the office to show and tell everybody, "Look at the information that I had." And I was like, "Do you understand that you are screwing people over, downwind, because they're going through stuff, and you want to be the cool guy in a briefing to let them know, look at the information that I have. But if your information matched up with that information, matched up with this information, all that shit wouldn't have happened if you guys would have just share your damn information." Like,
Yeah.
you're screwing people over there, and I'm seeing it firsthand. And so the hard thing is by the time these groups started to figure shit out, the next deployment wave was coming in, and then you got to brief them, and then they were tripping over the same stuff, saying, "Oh, we'll try this." We're like, "We tried that. Don't do that. Don't do it that way." "No, we're going to do it anyways." And so then finally, you're just perpetuating the cycle over and over and over again, where it got to our deployment, and we realized, look, all these people were doing the same shit over and over and over again, and we weren't getting anything done. How do we make it better for the next group? And so we started to make this shift because of me opening my stupid mouth, right, and then going downrange with, a group of guys that I probably didn't belong with, but got to meet some pretty dope people.
Yeah, and this was early in the war. For those that don't know, JSOC wasn't a thing this early in the war back then. So even that even trickled down to the conventional forces. So not a lot of sharing of information going on. And then later on, probably shortly after the deployment you're talking about, they would stand up the JSOC, where all the special operations forces would start communicating and sharing information. And then that trickled down to us at the conventional level. And things did get a little bit better, but then other mitigating circumstances that we won't talk about here get in the way of fighting an effective war. Your whole thing is leadership, and that's what you do now. You teach leadership, you coach leadership, you authentically get out there and try to make better leaders. But I'm curious, was there a defining moment while you were in the Army where you realized kind of the impact you could have as a leader?
I realized that the impact that I could have on people was needed. And not to say that I'm God's gift to people in leadership, but as you know, that there are a lot of people, and no offense to those people who have it, but as an NCO, you would see a lot of officers that didn't know their head from their rears, and making decisions with certain things. And you're like, why are we doing this? I don't understand. I would even say we had a sergeant major that was sorry, our new first sergeant that was saying, listen, when we go over there, we're going to do this and start talking about taking PT tests and stuff. And we're like, yo, time out, bro. Like, this is not what we do over there. We're not taking PT tests over there. And then we had a new general that coming in, and he was saying, we're going to still have respect. The military is losing respect. And so I'm requiring everybody to salute and blah, blah, blah. We're like, do you understand? Like, have you ever been deployed before? This was going to be my second deployment. I didn't end up going on that second deployment, but I realized that you had people that were higher ranking that just wanted, it was a power struggle. It was a flex. And I'm like, this is not the place to flex. Like, we want to come home. I want you to come home. And it was just so much showing off of their rank that I was like, we just need to. There's room and space for knowing your position on the totem pole, and there's a time and a place for your rank, but there's also a time to say, like, I can make sure that everybody doesn't come back effed up as badly as other people are.
Yeah, and I want to give an example of what you're talking about, because I experienced this on multiple deployments. I did 4 total deployments, so I got to see a lot of different things. But there's this one that stands out in my mind. A brigade sergeant major commandeered an air asset, a Predator, from us to spy on the patrol, to then chew our ass when we got back for having our sleeves rolled. Well, also on that very same patrol, we had 3 dudes lose their legs. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I assume that's the kind of stuff you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The flex on, let me make sure that my soldiers are out in the combat zone doing what they're supposed to be doing. Oh, by the way, this was a 5-day operation. We're on day like 3 or 4. So everybody's hot, tired, hungry, dirty, disgusting, so of course your sleeves are going to be rolled, because you're just trying to get a little bit of reprieve. And at the end of the day, does it really matter? We're walking around stepping on IEDs. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what my sleeves down are going to do to save me from that. And you choose to take an air asset that's armed, that we can, effectively fight the enemy with, and you choose to turn it on our own people to watch what we're doing on the ground. Like, that doesn't make sense.
So that's the reason why I want to do it, because I've been under really good leadership. I've been under really bad leadership. And so I want to be able to learn from those things. And I want other people to learn from those situations. And so that's where the whole intentionality piece comes in, is like, I just want to be intentional. I want to be intentional with what I say, how I say it, who I'm saying it to. And so we were talking offline a little bit about business and speaking and things like that. And one of my coaches in speaking basically says, what problem do you solve? And I wanted to come down to one word. And so we came up with the word complacency. I help solve complacency, right? With what? What is the tool? Self-realization. And what's the outcome? Intentionality. So when you look at the problem of complacency, you look at that is the opposite of intentionality. Being intentional. So I'll give you an example. Jim Rohn, great like personal development guru, says you have to love like a mother and hate like a father. And then he gives the example of, if I love my grass, I have to learn to to hate weeds, right? So if I love grass so much, then I can identify what a weed is if I hate it so much, and then I can go out and kill it, get rid of it, because it's going to take over my grass. So basically, I need to love and nurture like a mother, but I also need to protect or hate like a father. And so when it comes to leadership, you have to learn to love intentionality, love your people, love what you say, what you do, even if it hurts. But I can't allow complacency to come in. And complacency is a thing that hurts us. And I will even take it a step further, because we're both veterans, to say complacency sits in veterans when we come home. I don't want to talk about it. And that was probably one of my worst mistakes. I don't want my wife to see this side of me. I don't want my children to see this side of me. That is in a dark place. Keep the skeletons in the closet, keep it locked, boarded up. Don't even ask about knocking on the door or turning the knob. You know what? Let's just play it safe. Don't even come 10 feet within the door of this closet. And complacency ends up building up and building up and building up. And pretty soon that door is going to fly open, and all the stuff in there is going to damage a lot more than just you.
Yep, it's so true. And, it is complacency. I agree with you, but there's a lot of factors that play into us becoming complacent with stuff like that when we get out. I'm sure we're going to get into that here in just a minute. So you didn't go on the second deployment. The time comes, 9 years, it's time to get out. What led to the decision for you to get out?
It was that first sergeant and that general that didn't know what the heck they were doing. And so on that second deployment, I was already in the police academy, and I was trying to move from LA to Central California. Price of living was cheaper. That's where the academy was for the police department, and the police department where I was already going to be working in. So I was getting paid to go to the academy to become a police officer for them. And the first sergeant and the general didn't want to, the first sergeant didn't want to sign off on my paperwork. And I probably would have stayed in. I was asking for a transfer to the unit that's over here. They didn't want to give it to me. And so it wasn't me being hard-headed, well, then I'm going to leave. It was because they had already, I was supposed to get my rocker. I was supposed to get an E6. And when they found out that there was a possibility of me leaving, they didn't grant me my E6. So I left E5. But it was, no, you're going to go on this other deployment, and we're not going to give you your transfer, and you're going to have to put your life on hold. Like, we're in escrow for this new house. The police academy is waiting for me to show up, and I'm getting screwed over by the people who are supposed to look out for me. And I'm like, I'll stay in. Like, I want to stay in. I just want to do it over here. Nope. Like, there's other people in our G2 office that live at home with their mom and dad. They're not going to school. They're sitting at home, not doing anything. Their only income is doing their weekend a month, right? Because at this time I'm doing reserve. And I was like, you know what? I don't have the people around me to help me in this. And so I want to go. So got the right signatures and the right people behind me who I was close with, and got out. And so I wish I would have. So
you wish you would have stayed?
Yeah, because I mean, at this point now, I mean, who knows what would have happened between now and then? But I would be getting a check, right? I would have been retired.
Yeah, no, I feel it, man. So the transition often comes with a lot of different challenges. It's tough. It's really tough, especially dealing with deployments, PTSD, TBI, stuff like that. I'm curious to know if you're willing to talk about some of the challenges you faced and how you got out of your own way to overcome that kind of fuck you mentality that everybody gives when they get out. Oh, this, fuck that. I could do this on my own. What was the big, what were the challenges you faced? And then what was the big wake up call for you to get out of your own way and really ask for the help?
Yeah. So, I felt that I was on my game. Like, if you go to my Instagram and you scroll all the way down, you can see where the speaking spot takes over, and where, like, going to Dodger games and hanging out and working out was a big thing. Like, you see me at the gym a lot and stuff. I wasn't the biggest, buffest dude in the world, but I was pretty damn strong. And I was throwing weight around like crazy in the gym, and I was feeling good. externally I was feeling good, but inside was just I was being ate up. And so the mentality, like you said, it was like F everybody. I can do this. And I was a beast at work. I moved my way up within the first year, moved my way up at the nonprofit that I was in. A year after that moved up, a year after that moved up. And people are like, damn, Juan's moving up into the world. And like, I'm, kicking ass and taking names, right? Like, let's go. Because it was the work ethic that I knew from how I was raised and what the military instilled in me. So it was basically like, F you, if you're in my way, I'm going to keep on promoting and I'm going to keep on getting bigger and better. And I'm going to do so much for the organization. And everyone's going to be like, damn, look at Juan. And so it was like, F everybody.
And then your personal is suffering because you're doing so
Yes.
much for the organization and nothing for yourself. I know
Right.
that's exactly where it's going because
Yeah.
I've
Zero.
fallen into the same trap.
Yep. Zero for me. And so at one point, I started to feel further and further away from my wife. And prior to this, when I was working in the police department, I told her, "You feel like a roommate to me, not like a wife," because I was working nights, and so we had a son at the time, and I would sleep in the closet because the closet was the darkest place in the house. So I'd come home at 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. I would eat breakfast, or for me dinner, and I'd go to bed. And then I'd wake up around 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. I would eat, be out the door by 5 o'clock, be at work at 6, and start it all over again. 6 in the evening, so I could work midnights. So my wife would take our son and go shopping, go to my go out to like a cousin's house or something, just so I could sleep. And so I told her, like, you seem like a roommate. I hardly ever see you. I knew that I loved her, like love was there, but I didn't feel it. Even with my boys, when towards the end where I had 2 boys, it was like, I knew that now that being in the nonprofit world at this time, they would be like, Dad's home. And I'm like, don't bother me. Like, I'm tired. And I knew that I had boys, and I knew that I had a wife, and I knew that I'm supposed to love them, but it was like, what? I don't feel it.
Yeah, there's
I
that
just felt
disconnect in there, and you don't know how to
huge.
reconnect it, and it's frustrating. It's agonizing, really,
Right.
because you're just grasping at straws. Like you're very aware that you're not supposed to think and feel this way, but you don't know how to fix it.
Right. So you don't want to talk to anybody about it, because then you might feel weak, or you don't want people to know your business, and you're not trying to get into your feelings and things like that. And I found somebody to talk to, and it just so happened that it was somebody of the opposite sex. And so then I started to kind of have this emotional affair, in a sense, and telling her things that I would go through and things I was feeling. And it was like, well, you shouldn't have to feel like that, and you should be supported and stuff. And now I'm starting to see this person in a different way. And one day my wife calls me out on it, and she was like, what's going on? Like, you seem even more distant than ever before. I'm like, don't talk to me about it. Like, I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, why not? And so this one night, boys are asleep. She just keeps on pushing my buttons and pushing my buttons and pushing my buttons. And I'm like, leave me alone. And I remember having like cutoff shirt and shorts on. It's probably like 10 o'clock at night. And I respect, the female species, if you will. I will never hit, badmouth, or anything like my wife or anybody for that matter. But I started to get so enraged that you just want to hit something. So I remember, it's kind of funny, putting my hands in my shorts to restrain my arms, and then I'm grabbing and clasping my hands out of my shorts. So in my waistband, out the legs, and now I'm holding my hands, and I'm crouched down on the floor, veins popping out of my head as sweat is dripping down my face from holding in what I want to say. And I just scream, leave me the F alone. And then she's like, we need to talk about it. And I'm like, and I grab the refrigerator handles, and I'm like, what don't you understand? Leave me alone. And I rip both handles off the freezer and the refrigerator. And so now they're both in my hands. And my wife is like, you are scaring me. And I'm like, this is why I don't want to be pressured about this. Leave me alone. And then she hits me with the biggest 1-2 punch knockout on my chin. And she says, if you can fight for our country, and you can fight for a city that we don't even live in, right? Being the police officer. If you can fight for our country, you can fight for another city, then you can fight for me and our boys. We are the ones who love you. We are the ones who know you. Fight for us. Fight for you, fight for me, fight for Levi, fight for Lincoln. If you're so tough, fight for us. I'm going to bed. And for the next 3 nights, I slept on the couch, not because she told me to, but because I felt that I didn't deserve to sleep there. And she kept on telling me, you deserve to sleep in our bed. I'm not kicking you out. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this to me. I need to work with me. And so I ended up taking a week off from work. I have never, ever at this point, I've been working since I was about 16 years old. Different jobs here and there. I would say this was probably the only time that I had one job. Always had 2 or 3 jobs, even in high school. Always worked my ass off. And I asked for a day off. This was the first, I asked for a week off, 5 days off. This is the first time I had ever taken any days off since 16 years old. And even when stuff happened in deployment and they gave you 3 days off,
you're still working. Yeah,
I was still working.
Yeah, I get it.
So my boss was like, is everything okay? I'm like, I need to work with me. And so I was like, I went to the VA center and got a counselor, started doing my VA benefits, started getting paperwork, started writing everything that I needed to write out. I got braces because I didn't like the way my teeth looked. Shaved my head because I had a receding hairline. I was like, I don't want to have, I don't want to be one of those guys trying to keep it on and stuff. And so like, if you look at old pictures, you're like, bro, just shave your head. Shaved my head, got braces, like everything I didn't like with myself. And I just went to work. And I was like, you can do a different version of doing it by yourself. Like, you're not taking your wife to counseling, you're going to counseling. She's not shaving your head, you're shaving your head. Like, she didn't tell you to go get braces, you could still kind of do a version of that, but you still need a plan. And so then I just wrote everything that I didn't like about myself. And I'm like, I'm going to get this done today. And I'm going to have people around me that can get this stuff done today. So some of the benefit stuff kind of course took time, but I would say within 5 or 6 days, I had a counselor, was talking to somebody, and yeah, it kind of rolled down from there all the way up to today. Shoot, that was years ago, but still getting help from the VA. I have a service dog now, so he's in his kennel right now, so he can give me a little bit of privacy. But we just graduated some different functions that he's able to do with me and things like that, and but it was all that moment of, if you can fight for your country and you can fight for a city, then you can fight for us. And that was kind of like the turning point, big time.
Yeah, and that's the catalyst that made you sit with yourself and figure out who you actually are and what you actually want for yourself, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah. That leads me to the next question, which is, the support of your family, your faith, and therapy from the VA, because, that's one of the biggest, I think, misconceptions that transitioning veterans go through, is that it's not okay to ask for help, right? And I heard that extensively through my whole career, particularly as an infantryman, trying to deal with the mental health issues, the things that you see and do at war, or the things that you go through, or whatever that looks like. Going to talk to a counselor wasn't an option. They made it very clear that if you do that, it's weak and that you're putting your career at risk. And then seeing some people, lose their careers because they did go get help, didn't help anything either. So will you talk about how that support of your wife behind you, saying that to you, your faith, and then ultimately asking for that help from the VA and the therapy, how important actually is all of that stuff?
Yeah. Here's the cool thing about it. Like, for those of us that has a spouse that has stayed with us, because you hear these, horror stories about, deployment and, your girl going out and cheating on you or whatever, Jody. Right? Not being faithful, whatever. But, let's say you do come back and your girl's still there, or you get a divorce, you split up, and then you find somebody new. Like, the fact that they love you for who you are should tell you something, right? It's when you think about it, when you're gone and you're out and you're deployed and you have a group of guys that have your six, like, you have a woman that can do that for you, right? And it's like to understand, like, if she has my back, then I need to have her back, right? And that's just how the buddy system works in the military. So you have a built-in like buddy system there, and you just have to see it for what it is. And one of the things I talk about, and we can get into it a little bit later, but I talk about the different hats that we wear. Like, understand the hat that your spouse wears is not only your partner, your right hand, but is also your support and your built-in counselor in that sense that can help you relieve tension in probably more ways than one. But also you need to have her back too and support her and that stuff. Like, you guys are a team, and so I know that the more that I'm there, like, I understand my hat and my role as protector and to help her, and her hat is to also nurture me and help me in that sense. So don't bite the hand that feeds you. And so to have a wife that is so supportive to say, hey, I ain't going anywhere. Like, I don't give up. Like, she was more badass and than I was in that sense, because I think any other person who was weak, like, if I just sit down and think about it, any weak person would have left. Any weak person would have given up. And she is looking down the barrel of my eyes, right? And saying, basically, and has the guts to say, if you can fight for your country, you can fight for, a city, then you can fight for us. Any other person would have just cowered and turned away from the, like, beast that I was in that moment. She looked at me and was like, I know your heart. So to fight for her was a big deal, and for her to have her support is huge, and that's an ultimate flex. Like, if you think about it, like, you look at powerful men that have a spouse, like, that spouse is, I would say, attractive or hot in that sense, in right hand right next to you. Like, I ain't going anywhere. This is my man. This is my woman. Like, that's a dope flex to be like, there's something attractive of a confident woman, but the confidence in a woman that also comes from, I'm confident because I have this guy to my right. Like, that's huge. And so she was always like, what do you need from me? And she would always say, hey, if you don't want to talk about it after a counseling session or whatever, she's like, whenever you're ready. Or she'll ask, how did it go? You don't have to tell me everything. I just want to know how it went. Like, do you feel better? Like, what do you need from me? And so that was huge support. Talking to the counselors and stuff. So, or getting the help from the VA, the people in the office, like, that's their job, right? I used to hate when staff used to call me. My staff used to call me and say, hey, I hate to bother you. I know you're busy, but, and I'm like, stop saying that. It's almost like having a police officer at work, like, hey, I hate to bother you, but there's a crime happening right now. Like, if there's not shit happening, I don't have a job. Right. So, like,
right.
please call. Right.
Yeah.
So I would tell my staff, you're not bothering me. Like, call me. So when you go to the VA and there's admin there to put paperwork together and start the process, like, that's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. And a lot of them love to do what they do. Yeah, there's some people that are like, yeah, what's going on? They're chopping their gum and stuff like that. But there's other people there that, like, that's what they do, and that's what they love to do. That's how they're serving service members. So I want to give them a good job to do, and I know that they're going to do a good job for me. And so finding that help at that level was helpful, big time. Going into getting and talking to, like, a psychologist and stuff, this is where it gets dicey for a lot of people. And I didn't want to think that it was true. I was like, let my experience be my experience. I don't want you to cut the legs out from the organization without me experiencing it. Because I used to hear these horror stories, and it was true for me. I know it's not true for everybody, but the horror stories that I heard was something that I got to experience. Basically, the psychologist was trying to coerce me that my issues and problems were made up because I only wanted to collect a check.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
That's absurd to me.
So, do you really have this problem? When did this happen? Okay. And do you feel that way now? So why do you want to do this? Is it because you're going to get, X amount of money and you're at, I think I'm at 60, 65, 60%, 70%, something like that. And she's like, what happens if you don't collect the check? Like, what do you think would happen to you? I'm like, why are we talking about money right now when I don't want to do anything right now.
Yeah, I'm
I
here to
don't I
talk
don't
to you about
know.
what's going on in here,
Yeah,
not about my wallet.
yeah. So I basically said, "F you, I don't want to talk to you." And so prior to that, I had a more of a counselor from the VA office, and so she did that, and then she's like, "Hey, I think we should take this to a step further and talk to a psychologist." So then we started going to the psychologist or the therapist, whatever, and that was when I had that thing. And I stormed out. We went one session, and I was like, "Screw you, you don't know me," and left. And so then my counselor called their office and was like, "What are you doing to my patient and whatever? Like, do you understand? Like the." And here's the part that bothers me is a lot of those people aren't veterans, and I think that's one of the big problems is that you have these people who aren't veterans trying to talk to a veteran, and they are book smart, and they have this thing on the wall that says that they know how to do things, but yet they don't know the shoes that we're standing in. They only know what we're going through books and studies instead of kind of going through that stuff. So that was hard. Never went back to her, and then I kept on going to the counselor first for a while, and then I found the California Service Dog Academy, and I was like, maybe this is something. And so they got me. Uh, they were able to use my dog that I already had, but I had to wait till he was 9 months or a year before we started. But then they offered me a counselor or a therapist, and so then, and we're still kind of talking to this day. But it was a male, not a female, which to me no different, but I just felt a little bit more comfortable talking to a guy than I did talking to a woman. Which is no problem with that because my first counselor was a woman and she's great. I just talked to her the other day, giving her a heads up with what's going on. But it was just different. I think it was because there was some hurt there with the other psychologist who was a female, and so. But having that other person come in was great, and so we did some stuff in person. The other stuff was telehealth, kind of like this.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but it was
I'd
huge.
heard the horror stories about therapists before. Nothing quite as bad as what you were told. I'd had a hard time not punching her in the mouth for saying some shit like that. But particularly like the state I would have been in when I was going in there to talk to her. Like my biggest thing was rage, kind of like what yours was. Just pissed off at everything all the time and don't know how to deal with it. And so you're going to throw a comment like that at me. It's like, no, I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of feeling like I don't need to be living because I can't make sense of all of these emotions that I'm dealing with. You're supposed to help me with that, not, challenge that I'm here for the right reasons or not. So, it wasn't until after my ayahuasca experience that I got hooked up with a therapist through the Operation Red Wings program. And she was amazing. She was so awesome, but she was also a veteran, so she could relate. She had been to combat. She understood what we went through, and then, of course, had several patients that she dealt with that kind of helped her in that profession. So, dude, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I'm glad ultimately you got hooked up with the Service Dog Academy. And my dog is not a service dog, but he's a golden retriever, so he might as well be a service dog. And it made my life so much better just having him in it, and he knows to this day. He knows. He came in here this morning because I was having some issues, and he just put his head in my lap and he's like, it's okay, like, you're fine, calm down, it's great. Dude, so let's move on into, when you decided to ultimately, become an entrepreneur full time and fully grasp the public speaking thing. We talked offline, and, you talked about your climb, through the nonprofit, and basically by chance ended up giving a keynote because a keynote didn't show up. So what was it about public speaking that you just enjoyed? Like, what ultimately did you like about being on stage that first time, or in those training sessions that you were doing on Saturdays, that really was like, hey, I can turn this into something and live a pretty decent life doing it?
Yeah. So I just think it goes back to being motivated as a kid, right? And I tell the story a little bit of, well, the first time that I actually spoke was senior year, last game of the season. We had just lost for baseball. Yeah, so high school, we're in the locker room, our last game to miss the playoffs, and I would say the whole team was seniors except for two. We had a sophomore and a freshman that was part of the team, and like, hey, how do you think the season went, and how do you feel? And all these guys, you know, your senior year, you're probably never going to play baseball again, right? It's one of the last sporting seasons of your high school year, so you're done. Like, there's nothing else after that. It's baseball and track that last season. After that, like, you graduate, you're done. So everybody knows, you know, like, I'm not going to go pick up a bat in college or, you know, play professional. And so everyone's kind of emotional. I remember giving this big speech to them and the coaches, and not a dry eye in the locker room. And it was just it just came naturally to me. So there's always those times where somebody in the military, or a dad, or somebody's father, or somebody, pastor, whatever, spoke to you, maybe a friend or whatever, spoke to you, and you felt good after. It was like, that's what I want to be able to do. Like, I want to be able not just to motivate people, because in my bio thing that we were talking about, like, I hate fluff, right? Because there's motivational speakers out there that are like, find your why and now go out and go get them, and you're like, yeah. And then it's like,
You
now
gave me
what?
no sustenance for how do I find my why, and why is that important? Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Right. So it's like, I can motivate you to lift 300 pounds, but now you got to go into the gym, and once that bar is sitting on your chest, good luck. Like, you, right. So I want to be able to give frameworks. I want to be able to help people out in that way. But my dad was a teacher in South Central Los Angeles, and I think that's kind of like in our DNA. His family down the lineage were all teachers or principals and stuff, and so I have a sense of like this thing of DNA in me to teach people, to motivate people with some frameworks to help out. But it's just this being under this horrible leadership and being under really good leadership to say, man, there's people out there that just need a little bit of direction. And if I can provide that little bit of direction to help people to get from point A to point B without going through everything that, I've gone through, would be great. Like, you hear the fastest point between point A and point B is a straight line.
Straight line. Yeah.
That's the fastest way, but it's probably not the best way, because when you look at your life and where you are now, you probably did a whole bunch of squigglies and back and forth, but look at all the shit that you learned in the meantime. Imagine if you just got from point A to point B and didn't learn any of that. You'd probably be a less of a person, less of a man or a woman, depending on your, who's listening to this, but like, you'd be less of who you are without those mishaps, those failures, those mistakes, and then learning from them. However, if I can help you get from point A to point B, and you can learn from all of my squiggly lines going back and forth and my mistakes, you don't have to do as many. And so I want to be able to help people to get from point A to point B, learn from those life lessons, and to do bigger and better. Like, think about who you are now and what things would you have changed later on.
So many
right.
things, right? Yeah.
Not even with like relationships, but like investing and how you spend your money and like everything else. Is like, man, I could teach that to my boys now. So my boys, I have 3 boys now, 16, 15, and 12. And I'm like, let's talk about business. Let's talk about how we can save money. Let's talk about how to be men, how to become better. And so I just take that and it's like, okay, if I could do that as a father, I can do that as a director. I can do that as a speaker, and just help people to be, again, in my wheelhouse, how to be intentional with your spouse, how to be intentional with yourself, how to be intentional with your kids, how to be intentional at work. And so that's kind of what makes me feel good. That's my why. That's why I find purpose. So like in the military, right, you had a platoon or a squad or whatever that they would answer to you, or you would go and lead them. But once after the military, I kind of lost my why. Not so much. I would say that when I worked the nonprofit, I still had my why, because I had 200 staff under me. I was mentoring 30 leaders in leadership. And but when I left to speak, I was like, oh, this was a bad move. Why did I do this? Because now I don't have anybody under me. And I had to switch my thought process. And you have, depending on the crowd size, 50, 500, 5,000 people that you're leading. It's way different. It's way more. But they need to hear your message. They need to hear your lessons. And so kind of just refocusing that mind frame from, I do still have purpose. I do have a why, and it's every single time I get on stage. And so I just want to be able to help people to be intentional with everything, from their personal life to their work life.
Man, I love that answer so much. And it's almost like you're just continuing on in the role of an NCO, because remember, the three key things that an NCO is supposed to do is provide purpose, direction, and motivation, right? And so that's what being a good leader is. You're providing purpose to people. You're motivating them to continue on with this direction that they're moving towards. And so with that, what does intentional leadership mean to you? And how do you teach this to others through your speaking engagements?
Yeah. So intentionality again is the absence of complacency, right? And so and here's the thing, like complacency will come in and sneak up on you. So think about outside, right? Anywhere that you've been outside, your sidewalk, the street, take a walk. And I can almost guarantee you, if you were to walk around your block once or twice, you'll be able to see weeds that pop up not just in grass, but in the middle of the sidewalk or cement, or in between the asphalt and the sidewalk or the cement. And it's like, how in the hell does a weed get there? Out of all the places, I can understand the grass, but how in those sidewalks, under all that cement or under all that asphalt, you have something that pops up? How? Because it will find and make its way, right? In the Bible, it talks about the enemy is there to seek, kill, and destroy you. Like, it will find a way to you. And complacency doesn't even, it's bad, but it doesn't even seem bad or sound bad in the sense of how it shows up. Right? Your spouse or your kids are coming to talk to you and you're like, not right now. Come to me later. The game is on. Wait till commercial. That's complacency, right? It's I'll throw the trash out later. And then what happens? Maybe your wife says, I told this guy to freaking throw the trash. I'll do it. Now we've caused an issue because you wanted to wait. And I understand. Well, I want to do it on my own time. But complacency is the lack of communication, right? Dave, I'll do it right now. Like, what's wrong with saying, hey, I'll do it right now. 1 more minute, I'll do it. No, I want to do it. The trash is my job. I will take care of it. Give me a second. Or just get up and do it, because go back 20, 30 years. Go back to when you were a private first class. A drill sergeant, you told you to throw out the trash, you better move, right?
Yesterday. Yeah.
Yesterday, right? So how come then and not now? Complacency, right? Because we've allowed ourselves to get out of the do it now, do it right mentality, because I'm my own man and I have my own house. I can do what I want and I can do it when I feel like it. Well, when you feel like it, that's also complacency in that sense. But when I'm intentional to do it, I want to make sure that I keep my home clean. And here's the reason why. I want to make sure that I talk to my boys. So even with school, like with those of us that have kids, hey, how was your day? Kids usually say, oh, fine. It was all right. It was good. Right. But that's not an intentional question. So how I talk to my kids is I'll say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how was your day? 10 being amazing, 1 being shit. How was your day? Oh, it was a 5. Cool. Let's say it was a 0. What good thing bounced that bad boy up to being a 5? Something must have happened to bring it up to a 5. Whatever. Oh, that girl that I like came and sat next to me at lunch and we talked or whatever, got her number. Sweet. What's her name? Oh, whatever. Sarah. Oh, what do you have Sarah for any classes? And now it spawned into this huge all these avenues of approach when it comes to different questions. All right, bro, let's say it was a 10. What shitty thing happened that dropped that down to a 5? Oh, I got a D on my test. What test? So now I have more questions I can ask, and it webbed into this big old huge thing. So it's intentionality with the words that come out of my mouth. So one of the things that I tell people, one of the frameworks that I tell people is we all have different hats. So you right now, I want you to think about, you and the listeners, I want you to think about the different hats that you have, and I'll rattle some off, and you also think about the different hats that you have, because we're not all the same. So I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a speaker, I'm a podcast host, and today I'm a podcast guest, right? I'm also a son and a brother. So a lot of hats, right? I can also say that I'm also like an Uber driver because I'm taking my kids everywhere from practices and back and forth. And if they get hurt, then I'm also a nurse and a doctor and right, everything else. But let's just, I want to stay there in that spot when I say a nurse and a doctor, because if my kid gets hurt on the football field or on the basketball court or on the track, our instinct as guys is to say, hey, suck it up. But they don't need tough men. They don't need the tough guy. They don't need the sergeant that, oh, I get up and I would walk it off. And if I was your age, I would do this. Nah, they need dad. They need father figure, right? They need that support. They need that Hey, are you good? Hey, let's come walk over here. Like my son on the wrestling mat one time got the shit kicked out of him and he lost. He doesn't like losing and he started getting emotional. He started to cry. I didn't tell him to suck it up. I said, hey, if you're gonna cry, let's walk off the mat. Let's do it outside, but let's talk it out. And he was like, I should have beat that guy. It wasn't crying because he was hurt. It was that frustrating cry where you're so frustrated and angry, like your eyes well up. And he's like, I should have won and I messed up. And I was like, hey, bro, that's how stuff happens. But he needed me to be father and supporter in that moment, not tough guy Juan, right? So when I come home after a long day, or my wife has a long day, she doesn't need me to be uh financial guru and say, oh, we got these bills coming in. Like, she just walked in the door. If I come home and she's cooking dinner and I can see that she's stressed, she doesn't need counselor in the sense of, or mansplaining, or trying to figure out what's wrong with you. What's wrong with your day? Who pissed in your cereal? Right? She don't need that. So how do we take care of that at work, at home, with our kids, with coworkers, whatever? So what hats do we wear? So H, right? It's an acronym. H, how do I handle what I hear? A, how do I give attention with the right attitude? And T, how do I transform the temperature? So in the story that I tell people is how I came up with this was my boys were a lot younger and they were playing on the living room floor with Hot Wheels cars and stuff, and they were being loud. And I came home after a long day and I was like, dude, clean up the shit. What's the matter? I told you guys to only play with, so many toys, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, how do you handle what you hear? Bro, they're 5 and 6 years old. They were laughing before you came in. How do you handle what you hear? How about you join them in laughter? How about you multiply their laughter? How about you lay on the floor with them and play with your blood-given boys? Like, those are your boys, and you want to come and be director and manager? Bro, take your manager and director hat off. You're their father. You're not their manager and director. Get on the floor and play with them, right? My wife is stressed trying to cook dinner and on the phone with her mom, and she's getting frustrated. Hey, take the phone away from her. And how do I give attention with the right attitude and not be like, oh, you're talking to your mom, tell her to get off the phone, and how come you just didn't hang up? No, wrong attitude, bro. How do I have the right attitude? How do I transform the temperature? Hey, how's it going? How you doing? Hey, we're gonna sit down and have dinner right now. We'll call you back. Awesome, thank you. Hang up, and you transform the temperature in that room. Baby, how are you doing? Let me finish dinner. So like, before you go into any bedroom, any living room, boardroom, or office, how do I say, who do the people on the other side of this door, who do they need me to be? Not who I need to be, who do they need me to be? And what hat am I currently wearing? Do I need to take that off and put a new hat on? So when I come home from work, I need to be husband. I need to be, spouse. I need to be supporter. I need to be listener. I need to be whatever. So before you go into and open up any door to go into a different room, ask yourself, what hat am I currently wearing? Is that what's needed, right? Because you're not going to go in through a bust a door down without your Kevlar, right? You're not going to go in with your a regular cover on, or with no hat on, right? You're going to go in with the proper hat, because you're going to look stupid and or die if you don't wear the right cover, right? So what hat do you need to wear?
Man, that's such a great explanation. I don't think I could have laid it out any better. And it's one of the hardest things to learn how to do also, right? Being very intentional and mindful of how you're approaching that situation to get the best outcome. And I'm still working on it, right? Like, with my wife all the time. It's how do I approach the situation? She should be home here in the next hour, right? And I've been here working all day from home. She's been out of the house. She's going to want to dump everything she's been through at her job on me. And I have to understand how to handle that and who she needs me to be to listen to her vent right now, even though I may not really care to hear it because I've got other things I need to do today still. You know what I mean? My day's not over just because she got home, but I have to be intentional with how I handle that so as not to cause the fight that I then have to deal with later on. And man, it's awesome, dude. So what advice do you have for those veterans who are transitioning to avoid kind of falling into some of the common pitfalls through transition? And like, what would you want to leave them with today that will just kind of overall help them have a more smooth transition?
Yeah. I would say a couple of different things, and I'll give you a couple different tools. Understanding you're not alone, right? Understand that there's a lot of people that came before us that have gone through it, and we're getting better. How do we get better? Because we learn from prior mistakes. So even if you don't want to talk to anybody, talk to another veteran who has been in your shoes before, right? I tell a quick story of this guy that talked to me. He was like, "Hey, I got a lunch date or a lunch meeting, better word to say, a lunch meeting with the CEO, and he wants to know like what I think about the job, and I asked him like I want to pick your brain and stuff. I'm like, one, never tell somebody you want to pick their brain, because it's very selfish, right? I want to know everything that you know, and I'm not going to give you anything in return. But he was like, I want to ask him like, how do I move up? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what you should have done is your position opened up because David moved up to this position. You should talk to David, not the CEO. Talk to David. He was the one that was just in your shoes. He's the one that was like, you know how long it's been since the CEO was a freaking mail clerk or a secretary or whatever? Like, he's never even been in that position. Why would you want to get information? So the moral of the story is like, talk to the person who just left your position, the person who just got out of your position, and talk to them or somebody close to it, because they're going to have the best advice. That's the most in mind, right? It's the most recent in their memory. But find somebody that you can talk to, because that's going to be huge. And don't be shy with it. Don't feel guilty. You will feel better about it. It's weird. You almost feel worse. It's funny, Mike, because my counselor always told me like, be careful when you drive home. I'm like, why? Like, because you always drive faster. And I noticed that after I always left the session, I'm like 110 on the freeway. and I was like, ooh, I need to slow down, right? I need to slow down, because after sessions sucked. But then it was like, okay, how do I process things? But because I wasn't able to process things, I had to learn how to do it. And she was like, maybe you go across the street, get something to eat, think things through, and then leave. And then be cognizant of your speed. And if she wouldn't have said anything, I would have never changed. So if you want change, you have to say something, right? So I will say that find the support, find somebody who is just in your position, and talk it out and talk about it. You've also been trained by the best people in the world. So maybe you need to go get help from some of the best people in the world. And what I mean by that is, yes, go see a counselor, go to a church, go to find something there. But there's also other things that can help you. So one of the things that I'm a trainer in as well is I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. And so there's an assessment called Gallup Strengths or Clifton Strengths. And you might have heard like the love languages or the DISC assessment or anything like that. It's not necessarily a personality test, but you'll probably find it under personality assessments or tests. But with the strengths finder assessment, you figure out your top 5 of your strengths, and then you start to learn like the blind spots in those. And I figured out like who I am. Had my wife take it. I'm like, oh, this is why we don't see eye to eye, because these are your strengths, these are my strengths, and no wonder we're not seeing eye to eye. Like, I get it. And so it was a huge opening door there. It did take time to take the test. It did take a little bit of money, and it did take time in reading and wanting to understand. But you have to yearn to understand and want to learn. And so I would take that assessment to find out. And then there's a lot of people out there that are out there to help you, that might have a course or whatever. But the main thing when you look at everything is community, right? There's community out there. Find your community. Find your platoon, right? Find your sergeant. Somebody asked me the other day, how do I find a good mentor? And I'm like, here's key number 1. Every mentor should have a mentor. So find somebody who is also learning and leading or being led, because if your leader's not going anywhere, they're not going to take you anywhere. So I have to find a leader who's got a leader, and somebody that you feel comfortable with, but find and create your own platoon. Find yourself a platoon sergeant, find yourself a battle buddy, right? And get to work. Life is so much better, and you're needed. Your story's needed. Your work is needed. Your expertise is needed. Whatever you do that makes you dope is needed. I can guarantee it.
Man, such great advice, brother. I really appreciate you putting that out there, and I'm 100% on board with what you said, right? Community is everything. it's why I started my community. It's why I have a place for people who are like-minded to come and just dump everything and get actionable advice from others. And it's been so cool to watch that grow and kind of blossom, and the friendships and the connections and the opportunities, and watching businesses grow. It's been awesome. Dude, that's the end of the show, man. I really appreciate you. Tell everybody how they can find you if they want to book you for a public speaking gig. I know you've got a book you're working on, all that good stuff. So just let them know where they can find you.
Yeah. So on Instagram, if you have an Instagram account, it's Raise the Bar with a Z, Raise the Bar CEO. And then on LinkedIn, it's, I believe it's RTB-Juan. And then the website is weraisethebar.com, raise with the Z. weraisethebar.com, and just shoot me an email or DM, and I respond to everybody.
Oh yeah, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Juan Alvarado Jr. Thank you so much for being here, brother. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review. The Stronghold doors are open, so come join a community of like-minded individuals, learn about entrepreneurship, be with people who can help you through your transition. Everyone is welcome. Love to have you. Love to watch you grow and be a part of that journey. And we'll see you guys next week. Until next time, take care. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.